How you doing, guys? BC90 here, back with the next video in my Poise showcase series, and today we're going to be taking a look at a classic. It is the Claymore. So straight away onto my status page, I'm at soul level 125, and those are my stats there, guys. I will say I am using the prisoner's chain, so keep that in mind. That's an extra 5 points in vigor, endurance and vitality. And going over to my equipment page, I have the heavy Claymore plus 10, which gets an A scaling in strength when you infuse it with a heavy gem, and it takes 16 strength and 13 dex to wield. So it's a heavy Claymore, and with my current stats, which is 55 strength, two-handed, we get 528 AR. Now when you buff this bad boy with human pine resin, that goes up to 623 AR, so that's quite solid, guys. Remember, we are using a Greatsword, not an Ultra, Greataxe or a Great Hammer, so that's impressive for a Greatsword, guys. Now back over to my equipment page, I also have a heavy longsword plus 9 here. Basically I use it to deal with quick step users, as the most effective way to deal with those guys is just R1 spam with a fast weapon, and I also use it to finish people off when I need to if they get too used to my slower attacks from the Claymore. Now I've got a Blessed Cestus plus 10 here in my left hand slot as my parrying tool, but I mainly use it for that HP regen, which is about 2 HP regen per tick, and that stacks with this Blessed Cestus over here for a total of about 5 HP regen per tick, 4 to 5 HP regen per tick when I want to play that neutral game, get my HP back a little bit, and go in for that next trade. So that's what that is for. I also have an Arbalest plus 10 here with explosive bolts. Now you guys have seen in my previous videos how effective crossbows are against certain matchups, especially casters, so I always try and include them. And I also have a Pyromancy Flame plus 9. Why am I using that? It's just for Iron Flesh, guys, and I will discuss why I'm using Iron Flesh later on in the video. It's to do with Poise breakpoints and tanking heavier weapons, so we'll get onto that soon. Now back over to my equipment page, I've also got full Havels here, so that's the Havels helm and the armor for a total base Armourpoise of 50.15. Now in terms of rings, I've got the Chloranthy ring plus 3, I've got the Prisoner's Chain, the Leo ring, and the Havels ring plus 3. Now why am I using the Leo ring? Essentially because the Claymore and the Longsword as well, they both have thrust damage as well on certain attacks. So thrust damage, for example with the Claymore, is the R2 attack. And also the rolling R1, also a thrust attack. So essentially when I am poising through my opponent's attacks and I chuck in a thrust attack, there is a chance that will cause the Leo ring to proc, and you're going to smash them with that one thrust attack for over 700 damage. I've seen it happen, guys. Now unfortunately, the Leo ring doesn't proc 100% of the time. I'm actually not 100% sure how often it does actually work, but when it does, and you do get that thrust counter damage, guys, you're going to be hitting your opponent with these combos using thrust attacks for shitloads of damage, so I decided to include it in this particular build. Now, yeah, that's pretty much this build, guys. So I'm going to be talking about the Poise breakpoints now using a Greatsword. So essentially, I'm going to break it up between, individual hyper armor and infinite hyper armor, because obviously we can only infinitely hyper armor trade against a lower variety of weapon classes here using the Greatsword. Essentially, because it's pretty much impossible to infinitely trade against those heavier weapon classes. So pretty much to start off with, guys, in terms of infinite hyper armor trading, we only need 7.25 base Armourpoise to infinitely tank every two-handed R1 from all fast weapon classes. So when I say fast weapon classes, I'm talking about daggers, straight swords, hand axes, spears, katanas, scythes, all those fast weapon classes, guys. You only need 7.25 poise using a Greatsword to infinitely tank their two-handed R1s at the trade, okay? Now, as soon as you move up to regular hammers, so not great hammers, even just regular hammers, they get a shitload of hyper armor. If you want to infinitely tank regular hammer two-handed R1s using a Greatsword, that breakpoint you need to hit is 48.06. So as you can see, it shoots up quite a lot, but we're at 50.15 here. So if someone's using a regular mace or a reinforced club, or the Drang hammers, for example, all those regular hammers, even the War Pick, I'm pretty sure is a regular hammer, you'll be able to infinitely hyper armor trade against those two-handed R1s from that weapon class as well, as long as you stay above 48.06 using a Greatsword. Now when we go up to the Greatsword class itself, this is where things get interesting. Essentially because if you want to infinitely trade against the Greatsword class using a Greatsword yourself as well, you actually need 51.91 poise, so we're below that, okay? Now obviously you can use the Leo ring the Wolf ring if you want to, but essentially I'd rather just, you know, be able to tank one attack from those guys and then, you know, poise break them if they're wearing lighter armor to follow up with my second swing. So essentially, if you want to, you know, tank one two-handed R1 from a greatsword, you need 39.89 base poise using a greatsword yourself. Okay. Now remember, if you want to go for those infinite trades, you're going to need that wolf ring against the greatsword class and against the, you know, other heavier weapon classes. But we'll get onto that now. Okay. So greatswords, 39.89 using a greatsword yourself to tank one two-handed R1, and then 51.91 to infinitely tank two-handed R1s from the greatsword class. So yeah, I mean, you can do that, but I choose, you know, not to, essentially. Now when we get to ultra greatswords and great axes, you know, this changes. We're only going to be able to, you know, tank one attack from those guys, okay? Because as soon as you go to infinite trading against those heavier weapon classes, it's virtually impossible to reach, even with the wolf ring. So to tank one two-handed R1 from an ultra greatsword or a great axe using a greatsword, you need 47.64 base armor poise. So we're above that here. We're at 50.15. And the way that I rationalize this, guys, is you really have to pick when you want to trade against these bigger weapons, and it all comes down to how much poise your opponent has. Okay, so essentially, if I see someone using, for example, let's say a Zweihander or a regular great axe, you know, ultra greatsword, great axe, and they're going to come in for a trade, right? If they're wearing light armor, I'll happily trade with them. Okay, because number one, at the trade, we're going to be able to tank their first hit. Okay, because we need 47.64 armor poise using the Claymore. So we'll tank their first hit, but because they're wearing lighter armor, there is a high chance that they will not be able to tank your first hit, and instead you'll cause them to stagger, which you can follow up with your second attack. So remember that, guys, because they're wearing lighter armor, they have a lot less poise, and they will not be able to tank your greatsword attacks, while you'll have the advantage of tanking their opening attack, causing them to stagger, and following up with your second attack for a two-hit combo, okay? Now, the moment you see your opponent wearing heavier armor, now it doesn't have to be Havel's, it can still be, you know, something like the Black Iron armor or whatever. Because they're wearing heavier armor, it's likely that they'll have a high poise, obviously, and they will be able to infinitely tank your attacks, or at least tank your first opening hit. I will not go for the trade, because if they're wearing heavier armor, guys, you know, you'll both survive each other's first attack, but you will not be able to tank the second attack from a ultra great sword or a great axe. Okay, so just remember that, guys. You will be able to survive the first attack from an ultra and a great sword, but as soon as that second swing comes in, it will cause you to stagger. Alright, so keep that in mind. You have to be very selective with your trading. If your opponent is lightly armored and they're using those two heavier weapons, ultras and great axes, happily go for the trade, because you'll survive the first hit and be able to follow up with a two-hit combo when you cause them to stagger. But as soon as they're wearing heavier armor, it's not beneficial for you guys, because they'll be able to survive your, or to tank your hits, and you will stagger at the second swing, okay? Now, in terms of great hammers, look, guys, with great hammers, you actually need 53.63 armor poise using a greatsword to tank just one two-handed R1 from a great hammer. Now, like I said, I mean, there is the option there to take out the Leo ring for the Wolf ring +3 if you really want to go in and tank one swing from a great hammer. Again, like I just discussed, if, for example, the great hammer user is lightly armored, then it's likely that, you know, if you use the Wolf ring here and get above 53.63, you'll be able to tank their opening swing while you will cause them to stagger, you know, when you're swinging. So you'll get in that two-hit combo while they'll only be able to hit you once with that great hammer, and you'll be able to tank it, essentially. But if they're using heavier armor or medium to heavy armor using the great hammer class, you know, you can't even tank one attack, even just, you know, or you will tank the one attack, sorry, but they'll be able to tank your attack as well, and they'll follow up for the second with the great hammer for a shitload of damage. So it's not worth it, guys, not worth it at all. Now, so like I said, I mean, if you want to tank that opening hit from a great hammer, you can using the Wolf ring +3, because you need to be above 53.63 using a great sword. But instead, what I tend to do is I'll just target those guys in startup and recovery frames instead. It's a lot easier to just you know, hit them before Poise actually activates. So remember, Poise only activates during active frames. So because those guys are so slow, and you do have a speed advantage here, as great swords are a little bit faster than those heavier weapons, you can target them in startup and recovery frames instead to cause a stagger, as opposed to going for a trade. Now, what I also like to do with newer players, as this only really works against newer players, but it's a shitload of fun when it does, is use Iron Flesh, guys. So if you have a great hammer user, for example, who you know, you can tell he's a little bit of a newer player because he, you know, of his playstyle or whatever, you can chuck on you can chuck on Iron Flesh here. And Iron Flesh, essentially, while this thing is on for its duration, you'll be a tanking machine, okay? So I've had situations against poor newer players where, you know, they'll have a great hammer, they'll go in for the trade when I'm, you know, fully armored up with Iron Flesh, and I'll be swinging away without staggering. Okay, so that's what Iron Flesh here is for. Essentially, against those newer players, it is a killer, guys, and hopefully I can show it off here. You know, if we get a great hammer user and he's a newer player, I'll chuck on Iron Flesh and we'll go for those infinite trades against them. So yeah, it's a little bit gimmicky, but we have the room to use it, and it's a lot of fun to pull off when it works. So, you know, why not, guys? Why not? So anyways, that's pretty much it for this build, guys. I'll talk about the Claymore itself at the end of the video, so let's go straight into some matches. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Giving the Claymore a try. What do we got over there? Looks like a great shield user. An Artorias cosplay, maybe. Trying to debuff my my weapon here, the Jewel Charm. Can't quite get it, you know. He just keeps slightly missing. And it's one of those situations where we really got to time our openings here. Because he, you know, has that great shield, so we've got to wait till he opens up. You know, plan our attack, see if we can get him in a trade. It's been pretty clean so far, but yeah, just got to wait till he opens that shield. And now, alright, maybe not. There we go. All about timing, guys. All about timing. There we go, got him with the trade for the win. GG, man. Alrighty, guys, next match in the arena today. What do we have over there? It looks like we have a spiked mace. Gonna be difficult as we can't out-trade it, but we might maybe go for Iron Flesh. Maybe. Do we have the time to do it? Don't think so. Don't think so, mate. It's alright, all about timing. That thing's mighty slow. Ooh, almost got him there. Gotta watch out for that weapon art on the straight swords. It does get a decent amount of hyper armor, so we have to be careful with our timing. Nope, don't think so. And there we go, the Iron Flesh trick worked. Alrighty, guys, straight on to the next match here. Looks like we have the Dragonslayer's Greataxe over there. Excellent little trade there. Nope. I'm missing the range that you'd normally get with the bigger Ultra Greatsword class, guys. Looks like we're both here fishing for the trade. And GG, man. Alrighty, guys, here we go. What do we got over there? The Lothric War Banner. And some pyromancies, it looks like. Nice little roll catch there. You know what I absolutely love about the Claymore, guys? It's just simple, you know? Simple and elegant. It has a nice, elegant, simple design. Looks badass when you're swinging it. You know, it's just a classic weapon, in my opinion, guys. The Claymore. Classic weapon. Oh, almost caught us there with that sacred flame. Gee, that was close. Nope. And the thing with greatswords, guys, is you're just, you know, a little bit faster. A little bit faster than those 3 heavier weapon classes. You know, the Greataxe, the Ultra Greatsword, and the Great Hammer. So you really have to take advantage of that extra speed and play a little bit more aggressively. Well, not really aggressively, but you don't have to be as passive to wait out for those big hits. You can really mix it up a little bit by, you know, being aggressive and knowing you can, you know, get some decent hits in a little bit quicker, you know, off the mark than you would with those heavier weapons. Ooh, nice, beautiful. Alrighty, guys, straight on to the next match here today. Oh, we pissed him off now. Very much so, very much so. He's just running around, you know, passive aggressively down there. It's just like, fuck this, man. This guy he dares hit me at the start. Oh, he's got the dagger. Quick step, huh? It's all good. It's all good, mate. We can counter that. Gonna try and go for the parry, huh? Now he's just parry spamming. That's incredibly disappointing. Trying to get lucky with that parry, huh? Yeah, try parry that, bitch. Jesus Christ, this guy is giving me really bad connections. Jesus. Alrighty, guys, straight on to the next match here. What do we got over there? Looks like we have the Old Wolf Curved Sword and the Ethereal Oak Shield, it looks like. So we know this guy's going to have a little bit of regen. He's going to go for those running attacks. Alrighty, switched over to the bow there. That was a interesting little switch. Oh, weapon art for the finish. Ah, the Claymore. Such a classy weapon. Alrighty, next match in the arena, guys. What do we got over there? Looks like we have a halberd. So there's going to be an issue here with range and perseverance. Taunt him a little bit. And he mistimed that parry there. GG, man. Alrighty, guys. Next match. Looks like we have... What do we have there? Is that the Black Knight Glaive? I think it is. Gonna have issues with range here, guys. Oh. Just gotta be careful. Alright, so he's got a talisman there. We'll just annoy him a little bit with the crossbow. Almost ran into him there. That was a bit silly of me. There we go, baited out that trade. That was an awesome match, man. GG. Alrighty, guys, let's go for one last match here today. Looks like we've got a Claymore, another Claymore. Whoop. Looks like it's a Claymore. At least from here. Ooh, damn. Shouldn't have gone for that third swing so I could roll away in time. Idiot. So he's going to have that shield up. GG, man. Alrighty, guys, so that brings us to the end of the video using the Claymore. So what can I say about this weapon, guys? Well, look, it is pretty solid. It's awesome. Look, it's a classic. It's a classic, guys. So, you know, it's got the standard Greatsword moveset, you know, the thrust attacks with the R2s. Now, the weapon art, you've got the stance, so you've got the R2, which is the thrust upwards, and the R1, which is the guard break, I'm pretty sure. Let's have a look here. The guard break. Yep. So normal attack to break a foe's guard from below, strong attack to slash upwards with a forward lunge. Now I don't really use the guard break at all, to be honest. I just, you know, pulled off the strong attack a couple of times in this video, as it's far more effective in my opinion. So yeah, the moveset is quite standard. You know, it is a great sword, but I like it. I like the moveset. You know, I like these downward thrusts, and because you have a little bit of a speed advantage here in terms of against, you know, heavier weapons, for example, you know, you do have a speed advantage, so it's a lot easier to get your active frames to kick in and get into hyper armor trading mode. So against those faster weapon classes, you know, because you're a little bit faster, it's easier to time to get in active frames, in my opinion, than with those heavier weapon classes. And against those heavier weapons, because you're a little bit quicker, you can exploit them at their startup and recovery frames a little bit quicker using this weapon as well. So you do have those advantages, guys, using a greatsword. Now, the Claymore itself, heavy infused with human pine resin, it gets pretty solid damage, as I discussed at the start of the video, but we'll show that off here one more time. Two-handed here, 623 AR in total with human pine resin at 55 strength, heavy infused. That's pretty awesome, guys. That's, you know, pretty good damage for a greatsword, guys. So there is that. It is quite solid. Now, I do wish this weapon either had Stomp as the weapon art, or Perseverance, for example. That would have been awesome. I know the Black Knight Greatsword has Perseverance, so you know, you can use that, for example, to tank those heavier weapon classes infinitely while Perseverance is on. So that is quite awesome. You know, with us here with the Claymore, we've just been playing around with breakpoints, as I discussed in the start of the video, and you're either individually hyper armor trading against those heavier weapons, or infinitely hyper armor trading against those faster weapons. So you really have to mix and match what you can tank against, how many attacks you can tank against, you know, against specific weapon classes, essentially, like I discussed at the start of the video, guys. In terms of cons, I will say, because it is a greatsword, you know, you can be parried. Now, you did see in this particular video, guys, there were a few players who were trying to parry me, because greatswords are actually quite easy to parry if you're playing predictably, so keep that in mind. Even the two-handed attacks from a greatsword can actually be parried. So if your opponent is going in for those parries, guys, you know, my best advice for you is to play less predictably. Try and bait out those parries first before you're going for a swing, so delaying your R1s actually helps. So yeah, play less predictably, guys, otherwise you will be bait for those parries, okay? Now, another weakness, obviously, in terms of poison hyper armor only, because it is a greatsword class, guys, you're going to be infinitely tanking, you know, less weapon classes. I mean, you're not going to be infinitely tanking, you know, ultras, great axes, or great hammers. You're only going to be individually hyper armoring against them. And like I discussed with the great hammer class, you're going to need that wolf ring just to tank one hit as well. So in terms of poise, there's a less variety of weapons that you can infinitely tank against, but there are workarounds to that, guys. So it's not that much of an issue, but it is a little bit of a con, obviously, because I like infinitely tanking everything, obviously. So that's why I've focused mainly on those 3 heavier weapon classes, and I haven't touched the greatsword class yet. But look, the greatsword class is a lot of fun to use, so you know, it is quite viable with your poise builds. It just, you really have to get to know what those breakpoints are and what you can and can't tank, and how many attacks you can and can't tank, etc, etc. You really have to have that knowledge in order to make this weapon work against you know, all the weapon classes, essentially. Okay, now another little con I might say, obviously, is probably the range. There are situations where I misjudge the range here, because I'm used to heavier weapon classes like ultras, for example, that are longer, so they have a lot more range. You know, so I'm used to that extra range, guys, and with great swords you do have a little bit less range, so it's all about positioning and spacing, guys, making sure you are actually going in for those trades. It's especially difficult actually to get the range right sometimes for me against halberd weapons, for example, as they have a lot better range than I do. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to judge if I'm going to hit them before they hit me, if I have the range to hit them as they're hitting me. So there is that, you really have to get used to the range. But in terms of the greatsword class itself, the Claymore is actually, it has good range in the greatsword class. I'm not sure if it has the best range in the greatsword class, but it has a really good range, a lot better than something like the bastard sword, for example, so it's not too bad. But keep that in mind, guys, your spacing and your positioning is going to be very important with this weapon. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm a big fan of the Claymore since Dark Souls 1, so it's about time I made a video with this bad boy. It is awesome. It is a classic, like I said, so enjoy it. It is quite viable in your Poise builds. You know, obviously not as easy to optimize for as, you know, Ultras, Great Axes, or Great Hammers, but still a lot of fun, and there are workarounds, and you can chuck on little gimmicks like the Iron Flesh against the newer players just to catch them off guard, and I managed to pull that off here in one match, so that was awesome. So yeah, a lot of fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button. If you're enjoying my content, please subscribe, guys. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.